Hello, welcome to Conversations with Life. I'm Sochi and I'm here with Keith and Cedar. And today we are going to travel on the path with Cedar Steve and hear about his journey and what got him here and what he experiences in his transformation.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation. I think, tread lightly, ye who enter this crazy world of the Cedar Steve Barfus debacle.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess I'll just take questions. What would you, if I was a guest and you sat me down to talk about life, what would you ask?
You know what I was thinking about? We finished Sochi's episode, right? And in the very beginning, you talked about I began this life as Sarah Millington and blah, 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 right? And it never occurred to me to ask where Xochitl came from, right? And so then the second you were like this Cedar Steve Barfus thing, right? That's the first thing that came to mind. Because I met you as Steve Barfus, Utah educator. Here I am, fledgling little teacher from Australia being like, someone show me the way. And Steve was like, I have a way, right? Like that was, and that's all I ever knew you as, right?
And even then, my way was madness.
Yeah, I mean, I like it if I were.
Yeah, it was somewhat contained madness, but madness all the same.
Inspirational Anarchy, right?
Inspirational Anarchy, yeah. That's a good, I like that. Inspirational Anarchy. I should brand that.
That's write a book.
Inspirational Anarchy. You're going to be confused, but you're going to feel good about it.
You're going to feel great. You'll be like, fuck the band. I don't know why, but yeah. But no, that's the first thing that comes to mind is because I met you as Cedar.
Yeah.
There wasn't a separate formal handshake ceremony, but I met you as Cedar when we started doing the podcast 2 years ago. And I've never asked. And I think we get afraid of asking to see behind the labels, especially the name labels.
Yeah.
Teachers tread lightly with this because legally we're not allowed to refer to a student by a name that's not in the system now. That's how bad Utah's gotten with this, right? And we can't ask. So if I send an email, I've got a student, let's say their name is Tim and they're going by Tammy. If I send an email to that parent, I had better be using Tim's male pronouns and his dead name, or I could be in trouble with the law, right?
Wow.
So there's a lot of fear in the education community, but I'm sure everywhere, about trying to peek behind these. And yet this whole podcast has been about the deconstruction of labels, if I was going to talk about what this conversation is. So Cedar, where did Cedar come from? What does it mean to you?
Whew. Well, I mean, that could be an hour-long story.
Yeah.
It's got it's really interesting. But I'll just comment on it generally, and then I'll give you a little bit I'll give you some highlights on it. And that is that we get to change. We get to be who we are. And many cultures, it's built in to have a name that you get as an adult. So they have a name that they call you when you're a child. And then there's an adult holding. There's something else that comes in. And I think that's a really interesting practice. So Cedar, and as far as an identity goes, I can't really liken it to somebody who's shifting their gender or whatever, because Steve's still here. That's why I often say both. I always have to say, here's Steve, Cedar, Steve. We're both here. And, I think it's good to find your identity as an adult that is represents maybe a deeper path. And again, identity is not it. It's an energy or a way of being, or
could even
an aspiration,
archetype. We did a lot of episodes on archetypes, and it's kind of like that.
Yeah, and Cedar's interesting. So I, in my spiritual quest, one of the things I did of the many, many courses and communities and processes that I did, one was Carolyn Elliott, now Lovewell. And I joined her monthly community for a while. She was called, I think it was called, I can't remember, Wealth or whatever. I can't remember what particular version of that what it was with her. But I'd read Existential Kink, really liked her, still do. Fabulous teacher and great communicator, processor. Mm-hmm. And as part of this community, we did a spiritual practice every month as an online community. And one was plant dieting. Which isn't eating certain plants or whatever. It is communing with non-psychoactive plants.
Okay.
And there were two choices, kind of suggestions given for the plant dieting. One was rose and one was cedar. And so I ended up using cedar. Seemed the more manly of the two. And so
which is obviously your choice.
Wasn't yet exploring my feminine side.
I was going to say. If I think of Steve, I'm like, yeah, he's going to choose the manly stuff.
Yes, I'm going to do the manly one. I'm so manly. Anyway, so it seemed like the one to do. So I brewed tea with cedar leaves and sat every morning for that month, and then the next month after, and then the next month after that. And it worked. It was really interesting. I started to get, kid you not, dreams. And the most vivid dreams, and which is notable because I don't remember dreams. One of my skills is to interpret dreams, oddly enough. Mm-hmm. But me myself don't get a lot of vivid remembered dreams. So does every night, and I often get to and I love to play with people's dreams and hear them, and part of my coaching practice, etc., is to hear dreams and ask questions and help people come frame them somewhat. Interpretation is out, but helping people, figure them out is interesting. So anyway, so I had to get these vivid dreams. And for instance, one of the dreams that I had was vivid as I saw myself on YouTube teaching. And I had no clue that would be part of my path, right? Just the thing that we're doing now. Hello, YouTube. And I saw myself doing this, basically. Very
Were there
clearly
elephants in the dream?
There were
I feel like
that'd be funny. I don't know. I don't remember that, but that was right around the end of COVID, and Gina and I were getting ready to have our 25th anniversary, and I got the vows that we redid our vows. We disavowed kind of temple vows. We had. It wasn't even cool to gather people. We gathered 50 people, felt pretty edgy to do that at the time. And we rented a place and we had this party and we renegotiated our vows. And that was given to me absolutely word for word. And I got up and wrote it down. And, that essentially, those vows, I think, were part of the process that essentially ended my marriage.
So... In
a month
one of
later, through a dramatic process of drama and all sorts of interesting things, we ended our association as it was. Anyway, yeah. Go ahead.
So, in one of your dreams that you got from doing the cedar medicine, you received the vows. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, it was a couple funny pieces on that. One is that. Cedar on the bend. Cedar at the bend was really interesting. I could see a path, and it was along the river, and there was a huge cedar tree sticking out, and it was like the cedar tree was marking like what I couldn't see.
Okay. And
I was like following the river upstream, and around was symbolically some kind of source, and the message was, "This is a path. This is a pathway." Cedar is. But I didn't identify at that time with that name. I didn't. And, cedar is used by Native Americans. Cedar is used across the globe for, it's got spiritual significance all over the place. You got the cedars of Lebanon. Cedar is a medicine. And it's a birth herb, too, which is an interesting game. It's it's got all this character and interesting personality to it. I have some other things on it. But anyway, I got this dream of cedar around a bend. And at that time, I was in a pretty significant process. And I ended up in Washington, almost like overnight, my brother called me and said, "Hey, I want you I'm going to fly you up here. And I want you to drive my truck back to Utah, and then I'm going to do a bike tour all the way down the coast of California, and then over, and then I'll have my truck there." Cool. And so I go up there. He flies me up there, and he ends up not being able to go. He has a knee injury. I can't remember, knee or shoulder, whatever. He can't. He's like, well, I guess I'm not going to do it. So we end up touring the Olympic Peninsula up there by Seattle, and this is the home of the oldest cedar trees in the country. And so, I don't know how far out I want to take my audience here, but it was freaking far out. I got to meet all these old trees, and the oldest one in the country, which is a fallen tree, and this gigantic, like, crater of a trunk, and this huge tree that had fallen, and it was just massive. And it said, don't go sit in this. Of course, I went and climbed on it and sat right in the trunk. And as I did so, I felt kind of a presence, hard to explain, feeling, communication with the energy of this tree. And my whole left side of my face and body went numb. Like I couldn't hear out of this ear. It was like and that stayed with me the whole day. And it was cedar. It was and the energy of that, of whatever that is. And we had a lovely conversation. Now, this could all be my imagination. I totally love that, But it was a visceral experience. I mean, that whole side of I could not hear, Bill was driving. We were driving down the road, and I'm keep on having to turn this ear over because I can't hear. And I'm just am I okay? Did something happen? Am I possessed? What in the world is going on here?
Active tree.
Yeah. And so, I kind of negotiate with that energy and say, okay, yeah, I love the energy and the work we've done so far. I appreciate this communication, and this is far out. This is like Ram Dass says this all the time. He's like, yeah, far out, man. I can't believe it either when I went through it. Yeah, with his tales of his guru and such, and some of these things. So cedar has been a kind of a companion energy, and then at some point that became an energy that I aspired to transmit. And I see cedar as a teacher, space holder, a significant process with maybe masculinity, even queerness. I think it has all those elements to it. One of my friends once called me a badass nurturer. He's like, you're not masculine or feminine, but you're kind of like a badass nurturer.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like and it's kind of that energy, that badass nurturer energy. And so I chose to take that on as an appellation, but I've never felt like I needed to get rid of Steve. Maybe someday I'll just be Cedar, and that'll be easier for everybody. But Steve's always there. He's a pretty cool guy. He's hanging out in the background. He's a dad and a dude and all sorts of interesting process in that psychology. And then there's Cedar, which is kind of an ancient process. And there's more to it, and I could go on forever there. But that's essentially the origin story of Cedar. At that same time that I had that kind of surprise trip, I had no money, flat broke, nothing, so that I just ended up in Washington by this whole tour. It was kind of like, it really was like, and then Bill ended up not going on his trip. So we ended up having this time, this space to kind of travel together. And of course, I'm going to go look at the trees. And I've always had an affinity for trees. When I was a kid, I spent most of my time in a tree. I just climbed up the trees and I just sat in them for days, hours. I would have slept in the trees if I could have figured it out. You just can't quite get comfortable enough to be safe in a tree. But there were these huge pines, and I don't know if they were probably not cedars, and other trees, and I would just be in them all the time, in them, around them. And I came to think of trees as kind of a companion. And then one of my earliest experiences also was I had a unity experience with a tree. It wasn't a pine tree or a cedar tree. It was just one of those brown banana trees. That was in and I was laying on the grass, and all of a sudden I could, I think I was 9. I think I was 9. I don't exactly remember, but it was so confusing because all of a sudden I was the tree. Like I wasn't me, and I was me, and I was feeling the wind blow through my leaves, and it was just kind of really an interesting feeling, the sun hitting the leaves, like I was feeling it viscerally, like I was the tree. And, that was confusing. It was really interesting. And throughout my life, I had such mystical experiences. So I'd be walking around, and all of a sudden, I'd be even praying, but sometimes just walking around, and all of a sudden, and I'm in another world, and I feel like, and it's like so much energy that I can't stand it. And I want it to stay. And the more you want it to stay, the more it goes, right? And I didn't know what to do with it. And I was like, Jesus, like, is it? Yeah, kind of. And like, not, It wasn't the experience of like the Joseph Smith thing. I never got like information. It was always just like the universe. I used to call it the universe hugs, where I was just for whatever reason transported in these moments. And, there was a couple times I spent half a day that way. And then, never really landed back on the ground since kind of those experiences, I think.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So, those are some of the wacky ass things that I've experienced that kind of, I think, make me who I am. And I just think that I have some kind of gift of empathy, energy, communion. I've always felt nature. It's been a thing.
Yeah.
I have this analogy that I often use with clients about the universe kind of showing us a carrot on a string that makes sense to us where we are to get us in a direction. And then, we find out that's not what we were really doing. And I'm wondering, like, if we could go back in time to when maybe you left the church, or when you felt like there was a significant moment of awakening. What was the carrot? Like, how did you picture yourself 10 years later at that moment? And how is that different than where you are?
He saw himself on YouTube teaching. Remember?
Yeah, right. that was all post-church. It was interesting. In church, I have always had a problem with authority. The guys in suits in my ward, the rich dudes who were telling us what to do. It's like, it was always that way. I always had a little thing. One of my teachers was one of the co-founders of Franklin Covey, and he gave us all planners, and he was telling us what to do. And so my friend and I, we formed the Anti-Franklin Planner Association. We had secret meetings afterwards to mock all the things. And those lovely planners were probably really expensive, that they gave us, that this man gave us. And, he's a good teacher and stuff, but like also, just the assumption of God, all this stuff, right? Anyway. So, so I was always uneasy in the church, yet it was my culture. It was my background. It was the thing I was taught. I'm really loyal and simple in some ways. And so it wouldn't have probably ever crossed my mind to leave the church. I probably would have at some point. I probably would have just had it. But I was driving down the road, and by that time, I had got my teaching education, I got my college education, and then I taught for a minute. And then I was like, I'm not educated. And then I had this friend who was going to this really cool liberal arts school. So I ended up going to that school and read a lot of books, a lot of old books, in 2 years. I would spend 6 to 8 out of my hours of my day reading for 2 years. And then the other times would be spent writing or in class. Right. So it's like intense, or with kids, like I got into it really hard. And so I got that education anyway. So I was a studier. I got interested in those kinds of things. I felt like a lot of my mind that wasn't very aware became awake during that process. And then I was driving down the road, listening to NPR, and I heard a story about Brigham Young. And it was like, Brigham Young, blah, 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 all the weird things he did. I'm like, nah, he didn't do weird shit like that. That's got to be anti-stuff. So I looked it up, and I was like, oh, yeah, Brigham Young, pretty much a meglo. Genius.
What do you mean by meglo?
A megalomaniac.
Okay.
Basically, he got a lot of power, and he just used it indiscriminately for his own ends, and then said it was for God. It's just a meglo. But he was genius. I don't think he didn't have any beneficent energy or, wisdom or even inspiration, but totally an asshole. And if you ask me, you just look him up, man. Just like the weird shit, the currency, the strange things that he did in Salt Lake, like all of that. Anyway, so that got me looking, and then that got me reading other things, and pretty much I came to the conclusion that the church wasn't literally true, but it was my culture, so I hung out and I did it, right? It was just me doing my thing. I was very emotionally shut down. I was very empathetic. I loved to read, all these things. So the question that came up, I think first was, why would God do this? Why this bullshit? Why this structure? It seemed just heavy-handed to me. The gospel doctrine, the scriptures, all that. I like that. I liked reading and trying to figure God out and whatever. It was so interesting. Mormonism has an interesting view of God. It's pretty cosmic. It's pretty like you can get pretty fantastic with it, right? So that was actually pretty satisfying to me. Really, it wasn't until Gina hopped out of the church that I was like there. The thing that probably started me in that transition, or maybe even started us in that transition, was simple meditation. A friend of ours got into meditation, so we started to meditate. And I got all sorts of books on meditation like I do, and started studying it and different programs and processes. And I think that just kind of broke us open. And then, Gina had her own story and decided to get out. And jumped out with her.
Yeah.
Partially because of that bullshit story about the priesthood and what they should tell you to do and not to do. But,
So was there like an idea that you had of how things were going to go at that point?
No. Fuck.
But I mean, did you have an image of it like, okay, this is how my life's going to be now, and then it didn't go that way? Or was that not even a part of your experience?
I was so curious what Gina would be like out of the church. I didn't think it would go well. Right from the start. I remember walking down the street one day in Clapperton where we were at the time, and we were chatting, and she was talking about leaving the church and such, and I was just like, oh, fuck. I've been using the priesthood, my role as a priesthood holder, to keep her in check. And I don't have that lever now. And I was like, oh, fuck. First of all, that I wanted to have that lever.
Yeah.
Right.
Second of all, that there was some real shit that might go down that was, that we were going to have a journey. It was going to be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were never traditional as a couple. We were always weird. I was a home dad for a couple of years when she was being a chiropractor, and I had always been, I don't know, I guess in many ways more feminine than her. She's very
badass
driven.
Nurturer.
And badass nurturer. And so it was really interesting. I was always curious how that was going to play, and it went really well for a while, although I had no idea. Did I have an idea? Yeah, I think I saw our family just, I don't know. I didn't see us not together, I thought we could work it out and figure it out. And, it's just there's two wild spiritual awakenings and sexual awakenings and seeing the patterns that had been going on for years that nobody could see and all that. In shadow and light, man, it's something.
Yeah.
That's such an interesting question because I look back, what did I think? And I was like, I was terrified for a minute. And then I was like, okay, we can do this. It's cool, Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, as I found parts of myself and discovered parts of myself and really went on when I got out of the church, I got so curious.
Yeah.
And so I used to, I was a teacher. I didn't have a lot of money. So I went and gave blood, plasma. Mm-hmm. And that was my learning fund. So it was like $100 a week, $120 a week, or whatever it was. And I would use that on courses. So I'd buy books. That's how I did the Carolyn Elliott thing. I bought programs. I joined communities. I studied, and I went I went 6 different ways, 10 different ways. I learned 5, 6 different energy techniques, and spent time with people doing all those. I got into medicine. I got into, it was interesting. I took a course by Sue Morter and but these other energy guys did this whole thing that was awareness practice and stuff. Anyway, so much. Just I got into the energy. I was super, super curious about it.
So I have a couple other questions percolating. What are some of the most shocking or surprising moments?
Well, the one that shattered all, that any preconceptions of what was going on with this life we were completely rocked by, was when we were at E11, which is Utah Burning Man. I did some medicine, a little more medicine than I'd ever done, and one that I'd never done before, right? Or that I tried, new experience. And there was some sexual experience involved. There was high energy environment. There was music. There was like desert. It was crazy, right? Beautiful, beautiful day. And my Kundalini energy, whatever happened, popped. My energy went, poof. You could just almost feel it. All of a sudden, I'm chock full of energy. And I feel like a wire that's been loaded with way too much voltage and is not handling it well. All right. And I'm just like, I start to shake and shake and shake. Like I could not shake if I really focused on it. And then as soon as I would try to sleep or relax, I find myself moving and just kind of almost like, right?
Like with a pulse kind of thing.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And, it freaked me the fuck out. And it was also delightful. Like at first it was delightful. I was like, oh, this is what this is. And I thought, well, maybe it's just the medicine or the experience or whatever. Yeah, I didn't have the concept that this would last forever, So I'm into this experience. And at one point, there's so much energy running through me. They were like, I don't know, 16 people or something, all chained, and everybody was like, the energy was running through everybody. It was just, everybody was getting a pulse. Everybody's like, and Gina caught it, and Gina had the same symptoms over the next coming days, and that's a common thing. So I would go home and look it up, and it's Kundalini awakening. It's something that Jung studied. It's something that the Kundalini yoga is supposed to do, although, whether it does or not, it's a whole other thing. Yeah. And people want, and I'm like, why would you want this? Well, and the truth is, I shortcutted it. I did medicine. I think it connected with my meditation practice at the time and whatever I was doing with energy and process and just my own natural energetic self. that was just going to happen. I think it was going to happen eventually. I just kind of like found a place. My soul found a place to like punch it into gear. And it is the fast road to spirit, to kind of like a whatever, awareness or whatever. Basically, it shakes you loose of anything that isn't honoring of energy or presence until you're shook. Good. And the next 6 months of my life were absolute bliss and hell at the same time.
I was gonna say, like, what was the clarity that you like? I mean, they talk about with a Kundalini awakening, you talk about the physical symptoms, and then it talks about like that clarity and that like connection.
Yeah.
Did you experience any of that?
Well, yeah.
What became
freaking downloads, but it was like in my jumbled brain, it was like all the time, right?
Unclear clarity.
It's the thing that started me on all of this spiritual quest, because I had to figure out energy, the reason why I bought the courses, etc. All those reasons. Like I said, I got lit, and then I had to figure it out. So many realizations, so many things, so many places and ways of being, and not feeling, and at the same time, because my system, so classic Kundalini awakening, you're meditating, you do yoga for a while, you work with a master, you get studied, and then one day that energy goes blink, and you go, wow. And you're ready because you're ready for it. You're fucking ready, right? That's what the whole yoga is for. All of it is for to guide that energy. Me, I'm just a bullshitter in a bullshitter society, in a repressed emotional body, time and place, weird as fuck for me. Never really felt like I was real anyway, somehow.
Yeah, it almost feels like a dam broke.
Yeah. And that dam broke, and it broke big, and it destroyed everything in my life eventually, including my teaching career, by the way. I was in the shower one day and I was like, I cannot do this anymore.
Yeah.
I can't be in a classroom enforcing the state upon these children for one more fucking year, right?
Yeah.
And I quit like the next day. It was something. It was something. Like I was like, I'm done. And then it turned out there was a whole drama thing that happened that was related to something that I didn't do, that I was accused of, and I was fired. I went in actually. So drama happened. I went in, and I said maybe I need to keep my job another year. And I kid you not, 2 days later, they came to my classroom and said, "Come with me. You're suspended."
Yikes.
And somebody misunderstood something they heard from somebody else, and they called the school and said, "I think he's having an inappropriate relationship with a student," which was never, ever a thing.
No way.
Not even a former student.
Yikes.
Nobody. But that's what they said. That's what got me dismissed. And then there was other process of that happened that ended up getting me fired. And, that was all investigated. And I was found not only not guilty, but like, lady almost was like apologizing. Anyway, so what my point is, it freaking.
Well, I mean, it sounds like the universe force ejected you when you tried to back out of
right.
You were like, I'm going to quit. And you're like, actually, I'm not going to. The universe was like, fuck you, you're going to.
Don't fuck with the energy. And again, so the way that energy works is that we live from the inside out and from the outside in. And as you shift inside, what you resonate with and how you resonate shifts. Mm-hmm. So you'll either figure it out or it will figure you out. Right. So I always say this about energy: play or be played. Yeah. Because if you don't move yourself in the direction that higher self or that energy or that whatever it is, that inner process is taking you, you'll be moved and it won't be fun.
It gets more messy when you're resisting it.
Yeah, it gets more messy when you're resisting it. And, you're going to resist because you don't know. It's confusing.
Yeah.
And again, for 6 months, I'd get up in the morning some days and I would look at Gina and I'm just like be crying and be like, I don't feel real. How do I go into a classroom?
Yeah.
I literally don't feel like a real person today. I didn't sleep for 2 weeks after that Kundalini awakening, more than 15, 20 minutes at a time, because I was shaking all night long, buzzing with energy right down to my fingertips, just like all the time, right? So it was a good time. And bless it. Bless that experience. It was wild. Absolutely fucking wild. And to this day, I'm chock full of energy all the time.
Yeah.
I wake up, high energy, and I go to bed, okay, energy, calm down. It's all good. You're good. And maybe I just have a nervous system disorder. I've considered that, or some kind of mental illness. That's always possible. I'm totally open to hearing all those
They're
arguments.
not mutually exclusive.
But here's the thing: the symptoms that I discovered, and I got home and I found Bonnie Greenwell's books on Kundalini awakening, kind of a coach, whatever, that works there, and I avidly researched everything, and all of my symptoms, and a lot of what happened to me was very, very common to a Kundalini awakening, to a spontaneous Kundalini, right? As opposed to one that somebody like cultivates over time and then gets this nice little, uplift of energy and insight. What was the insight? All of it, man. All of anything I've said and everything that has come through it, anything that's my medicine. So many seeings and understandings and processes and embodyings, and it's brought me to the teachers, all the different teachers of energy. And I always come back to like Carl G. Jung, man. I think that guy had it. He knew it. He studied Kundalini, by the way. He has a whole book on it. That's what I think my next Carl read. But like his process is I wouldn't call it correlative, but I would say it as I read him, I feel so much of my own process. Yeah.
Well, that kind of answers my second question, which was going to be like, what are some of the teachings or practices that you've come across that are kind of like tried and true now that you're like at least a decade into this? What do you keep coming back to? And you just said Carl Jung. Is there like a practice or a couple that like you continuously return to like stabilize your energy when you step into the next container of unknown?
I've counted, and I think I've tried over 300 practices. Like I dug in. There was a time where I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning so I could practice for 4 hours before school. Like I was like into it. I have read so many books and took on so many different little pieces and such. It's interesting. The Sue Morter is interesting because in a way, she's very upside, very spirit side, very yogic in that light sense. But her practices was brilliant for me, and her classes, she's a great teacher. And, there's a zillion ways to work about energy. I just, for whatever reason, her way complemented my process in a way. Central channel breathing. Just breathe up and down your spine into the ground. It works. It's a great way to come alive in your teaching, in your energy. It's that since I started doing that, I haven't stopped.
Yeah, I feel the same way. You introduced me to that practice probably 3 years ago, and it's the same. And it's the most recommended thing. I teach it to all my clients because it's so easy. It's very simple, and I feel like it works so obviously within a short period of time. Yeah,
it does. It's one of those things that's just a very basic practice. I think, what people are trying to do with Qigong, what they're trying to do with yoga or whatever, all those things are really great. And those are subtleties. Those practices are amazing. I've done a little Qigong, done a lot of yoga. And they're awesome, but the set of practices that Sue Morter talks about for energy, enliven energy, they build energy. They're so simple. You can do them in your daily life. You don't take them, as a practical thing. I think it's pretty good. Plus, energy is about living it, it's less about practice. So if I wanted to get into like a super practice and make that my life, like yoga or Qigong or whatever, and make that my thing, because that's what people do and they get into those. But that's one thing about my path is I've never been able to do that. I've never been able to get to like somebody's thing and say, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. Yeah. And this is the one true practice. And I know. I mean, I do a little magic, and I do some ritual, and I do temple and tantra. Tantra's been a big one. I come back to tantra. Like, you know, in the episodes on sex, everybody's awakening goes through a sexual reckoning, and tantra's been a way to express my energy and to work with that in a way that I think understands my energy. Like I make sense there. I'm really good at transmitting energy or feeling energy. I have a large energy field that people can really feel, and that's been a really fun thing to do, and that I can feel other people. You know, that I'm sensitive to others' energies. So the general exchange of energy in the work that would be called tantra, energy, sexuality, sacred sexuality, you know, have been really helpful. Kriya yoga is one I've come back to recently, and I got that because I had some experiences that were like. I never know how people are going to feel me. Like I get accused a lot.
Yeah. And
of things like it's weird, man. Like bullies all my life have targeted me. I've been so targeted over and over and over again, to the point where I feel like a sociopath targeted me in my adulthood. And I don't know. I don't know how people feel me. Sometimes they think I'm awesome, and sometimes I think I'm a problem. Like they don't even know why. They're just like, I'm uncomfortable with him, so he must be bad, you know? Right. And really it's just my energy is like, blah. And so I was like, okay, I need to keep a tighter energy container. I need to figure this out and work this daily in this way. And I think Kriya Yoga is a way that you work with energy in a very disciplined fashion. And I think it just does that. It creates a really understood energy container and process, and then moves that energy towards seeing and understanding and practice and being that I think is really helpful. So I do Kriya. And it's a little bit like regular yoga. You move energy, but you concentrate on moving energy through your body and hold poses and various processes in that one. The one that people know from that is like Yoga Nidra, you know, breathe through one nostril then the other. That's done in yoga. That's a yoga Kriya yoga practice. Anyway, so that's been a big one. And I've come back to that recently and been fairly disciplined about doing Kriya every day. And then medicine, hape, mushrooms, and many others, but those are the two that are good. We had ayahuasca, you know. Those paths, I think, open you up to energy. They create, my seeing on medicine is that it creates a different energy container and lets you experience yourself differently in that way. So it like lets you try on your energy in a little, with less
resistance
boundary or whatever. And then you can kind of feel what this feels like. You can't live like that. It's a little rough to go around, you know. But then when you integrate, you know, you're a little bit more close to that, you know, that experience. I've had some beautiful medicine experiences, just gorgeous, indescribable, almost processes with medicine. And I don't do medicine that often, but I've done it a lot, and I've guided a lot people through it. So that's been it's been a big deal. And medicine will always come back. And Hape's been the one recently this year. I've had a big Hape practice, and I never thought I'd do that. It was a once a week thing for me for a while. And tobacco generally. Tobacco is really fascinating. It increases polarity. It increases both masculine and feminine hormones. It's a teacher plant. It's really a gift. So both smoking, tobacco, be careful kids, it's addictive. I won't let myself smoke more than once a week, twice at most if I'm in some kind of ceremony situation. And hape, you know, daily. So has been my practice. And you know, I'll shift to something else when it's right to shift to something else, but that's the game right now.
Yeah, I find myself like listening to you and feel like I'm trying to hit a moving target, you know, which I think is definitely an energy that you give off all the time, right? The inspirational chaos, the human juxtaposition, like the amount of times we have said some kind of juxtaposition in the last 44 minutes and 44 seconds, no joke, is wild. Like I need to put like a counter on the YouTube video, but it's always kind of been such an interesting teaching piece for me, right? When I've interacted with you, has been like, how do you hold these really not just different, but sometimes opposite and combustible realities inside yourself? And before I even knew any of the stuff that we've learned in the last 2 years, or that I've learned from you guys, that was obvious to me in my interactions with Steve, right? So I guess, I want more for myself of that, of being able to hold the disquiet, confusing wonder that is your energy in my head, right? For myself. And yet I know myself as a very I feel massive, but I think critical, right? Like I'm very practical and logical in my thinking, and then my heart is huge. Like my emotional range is a lot bigger than my mental range. But I'm very linear, right, in the way of thinking, and I seek to know myself because I know that I don't, right? That's been my polarity that I've worked with for a long time. And I put that over you, right? And I'm like, the Venn diagram of that doesn't make any sense, right? I'm just like, how do you, as an individual, Steve, Cedar, know yourself when yourself moves so much?
It's interesting. I had one of the vivid dreams I had is I was teaching a class, and I had, half of the class was old, like 1930s or something, and half the class was modern, split down the middle. And then I was teaching a book, and I didn't have enough of one copy, and some of the books were old, and some of them were new, and some of them were different books. And so I was handing out all these books to people. And then there was this kind of prim mother sitting next to two identical twins, and they're wearing red dresses with white shafts. It doesn't matter, right? These little blonde girls. And then one set and then one conjoined, right? And one of the processes that I am, right? And in a way, this is like shamanic. This is what a shaman does. And I'm like a shaman without a tradition. In a way, maybe I should find a tradition so I can get a little more fucking grounded, right? But in a way, I'm very grounded.
Yeah.
Like, I know who I am, and I know, like, I don't get shaken out of that too easily. Yet, it's nutty in here, right?
Yeah.
And I'm always arguing with myself all the time. I'm like, this and then that. I'll always counter and see it all the ways, right? And I think one of the things that I'm supposed to do in life is to hold the polarities. Hold the masculinity and the femininity, and all the way, right? I'm not picking one. I'm not going to be the man, and I'm not going to be the woman, right? But I can feel both a lot. It's intense. Yeah. And, I'm not going to associate and identify with the dark. That's stupid, right? And I'm not going to worship the light either, solely, because you lose the richness of being present, conscious, if you get the bypass, which is nice. You get to leave your body and, be all spiritual and shit. But it's not sustainable or rewarding. So, like, to hold the light and to hold the dark, to hold the masculine and feminine, and it seems like every other polarity, right? To be absolutely wonderfully taken care of, and money's always there when I need it. Totally rich, and I'm absolutely fucking poor. Like, it's hilarious. It really is. Like, it's pretty hilarious to be me. I had a medicine interaction with a girl over Christmas time, and she comes up to me afterwards like, "How do you even be here? Is this life hard for you?" I'm like, Yes and no.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, this is rough, man. It's tough. It's rough to have this gift, and it's absolutely wonderful. I wish I could take my energetic daily experience and share it. I wish I could just be like, okay, check this out, y'all. This is drugs. You don't have to try, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna feel high all the time. One of my friends named me Permastoner, because I kind of am. I kind of always have been. I can sit and meditate and do energy practice and really get there. Substance is kind of complementary. In fact, the first time I did maybe the second time I did psilocybin, I was like, oh, welcome to my world, everybody.
I'm not feeling anything. It's like, really?
I felt it, but it was so like familiar to much of the experience I've had, especially some of those experiences where I would have these
connective
universe hugs,
I mean, it feels like what I'm like as I'm listening to you and picturing this definition, it's almost like picturing a painting of negative space. Like thinking about that, and like there's so much in the frame, but you as Steve exist in this like negative space. Steve, Steve. Encircling and filling in the spaces of all the things.
Yeah, it's so apropos. I can't decide on one. You have to use both. Right? It's that polarity.
Can I talk about Weird Barbie?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you can talk about Weird Barbie.
So
that's a segue.
Because it's just like exactly this.
Weird Barbie.
So yeah, we did some plant medicine quite recently, and it was just the two of us, and all of a sudden I look at him and his face is like encoded with like these Egyptian hieroglyphs in light. That's like the consistent part of him. But I'm sitting there looking at him, and he turns into this like weird Barbie thing where like his hair will all of a sudden change color, or he'll be bald, or he'll get old and young. And it was like kind of what you were describing, like this human is a reflection of the reality of life. And I think part of the reason that people have big responses or reactions to him is that he is a moving target. Like you're kind of looking in a mirror with him.
But it's like one of them funhouse mirrors.
Yeah. But also like our minds are trying to land on something, and there's just nothing to land on.
And it's like there's like I feel like I'm trying to land on an island that is constantly moving beneath my feet. It really is. But it's like, that can be really disconcerting.
Right.
To a person who's used to landing on solid ground in the people that they meet, in the interaction that they have. But then you can also take that, and it almost feels similar to me to like to a workout in the good way, the endorphin rush of like I am pushing myself, and I'm literally just having a conversation with a guy I've known for 5 years, 7 years, 7 years,
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing to think about and be like the kind of energy that you have to hold, such that you are an experience that even a lay person can pick up on as unusual. Because I feel like a lot of us, part of, hearing and seeing and perception and senses, they talk about how your brain is picking up like thousands upon thousands of information pieces at a time, right? Like the feeling of each piece of fiber on your clothing and every sound and every smell is being detected by your brain. And the real trick is that your brain parcels out what's relevant to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the trick of survival. That's how we survive. So every human being does that, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're on
we're
audio
looking
editor, you didn't hear the sound of the AC just kick on, right?
Yeah.
But like my brain is adjusted to listening to that sound. And that's what people do. Everyone does this. So then if you are someone that comes in where everyone who is used to not seeing anything can't help but see you in some way, even if it's an uncomfortable way, that's a very powerful energy to be holding.
Right.
right? Like you are affecting people whose whole lives has been about mastering the art of being unaffected.
Right. And there's this game we play with people where we sort of have to find a persona we can project on them that makes us feel safe. Mm-hmm. So there's like a security piece that we're always kind of looking for, and his energy just isn't available for that.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I think that that's potentially why I was attracted to him, because I don't feel security with him, but my nervous system feels more regulated with him than any person on the planet. And I think it's because I was actually looking for somebody who will play closer to what reality is, which is constant change, than the average person.
Yeah. See, me, I always sort of felt like agitated, but not in it, like not like I'm agitated, but like more like I'm agitated, like, you know, like there's an activation in the experience. Yeah. So even like joining the poetry club, you know, like people are like, why are you joining the poetry club? That's like for the scholars, you know, like what do? You don't have to go to that club. Why are you going to that club? And I'm like, I don't know. It just feels really good to be there. It feels exciting. And I'd go to like his lectures and I'd go to his classes and get involved and learn from it because it felt like learning feels, just being in that presence. You know, and I've always been really excited by that field. And so I just am like, you know, the agitator. I'm like thinking about like Steve's superhero name, right? You got Cedar Steve, Steve Cedar, the agitator, right? Finding inspiration in anarchy, like just like all the tags.
It's part of, you know, like the whole Ron Dass thing of like becoming nobody. Like I feel like I've had my own experience with that, although you know, I'm no freaking Ram Dass or whatever. But like the experience of like, through the process, some very difficult things and ego challenges kind of like knocked off some final pieces. Like me, like I said, it's I think I've said the word over enchanted or whatever, you know, it's at both entirely goofy and dismissible, you know, myself and like heavy and not heavy, grounded and real. Yeah. In some way that
there's a consistency there that is. Yeah. It is real. But that grounds the absolute, you know, chaos, if you will. Yeah. And that experience with you was so beautiful. It's like one of those moments where I wish I was an artist because I wish I could paint that. I wish that everyone could experience just the exquisiteness of seeing a visual representation of what we've been talking about here, of your essence. And yeah, it was profound.
Well, there just is not enough time in a 1 hour length podcast.
Well, you can't cover a whole story. You know, like I said, you can get some highlights. And I just want to say, like, to kind of finish, like, the journey since then, you know. So I could say there's 3 phases. There's kind of leaving the church. There's Kundalini awakening. And then there's life breakdown.
Isn't that how it goes?
It kind of all came to a head. And, you know, I lost my marriage, most of my friends, my job within a couple weeks time. It just all just kind of went. And I was like, what? Yeah. You know, and it's like, shove. And then, you know, and then just some fallow time. But since then, it's been learning. It's been learning how to be something else, you know? And I think it's where we need to go. I think the identity thing has played itself out. Materialism has played itself out. And I think one of my main teachings is people need to experience themselves as consciousness. Not that we need to be conscious, right? Yeah. That's no good. Ego can play with that. But that we need to experience ourselves as energy. You know, we're energy, we're consciousness, energy, whatever, experiencing itself. And that I think that's where things are going. I think that's where people get to. I think that's where people who we would used to have called gurus and shamans or whatever get to that place. And so I consider myself a half-baked shaman, essentially, with no real tradition or teacher or elder, but a whole bunch of nonsense in my head and wonderful teaching and practice under my belt. And so curious about the future. What is going to happen?
Yeah.
What is going to happen? This world is breaking up. It's going to. The materialism has hit the fan.
Yeah.
It doesn't work ecologically, politically, socially, and in every heart. We've hit something. And something's got to give, And so I'm curious how that looks in 5, 10, 20 years, which will be my kind of work.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? What's going to happen? It's going to be cool. I don't know. I trust I trust soul. I trust energy. I trust the greater intelligence that it's going to do it just right. And I tell you what, the whole lot of spiritual bullshit's got to go. A whole lot of ego identity's got to go. A whole lot of reliance on ourselves as material beings and has got to go. And that's a painful process, but
exciting too. It's agitating.
Let's bring it on.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
All right.
Well, I feel honored that we found each other in the months after the life falling apart, and there's no dangling carrot for us, and but it feels like a grace and a prayer every day that it's like I get to walk with this guy. Just has made the last almost 4 years totally joyful.
4 years.
So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's been a conversation.
It has.
A really interesting conversation between our paths and the process that we've been in separately and together, like two separate waterfalls.
Well,
that was adorable. On that note,
thank you for joining us today. We just loved diving in with this magical being. And if you like what's happening here, join our conversation, like, share, subscribe, find us on soulandspiritwellness.com. And we would love to have you on our podcast or have your question on our podcast. So join us.